Welcome to Color of Music Collective's Grammy panel Behind the Nominees, sponsored by DistroKid. Hi everyone, my name is Marcella and I'm the Executive Director of the Color of Music Collective, and we are so excited for this panel tonight. We've got a really great lineup for you. So we're going to begin with introductions, jump into a few discussion questions, and then towards the end, have our Q&A session where each of you have the opportunity to drop a question for our panelists and ask it live. No video, just audio, so no pressure there. But definitely take the opportunity to ask some of these really incredible professionals some of your own questions. So yeah, let's jump into introductions. Let's have everyone go around, briefly say your name, pronouns, company, and your clients. And let's kick it off with Tasha.
Hi, I'm Tasha Stoute. My pronoun is she. I am Senior Manager of Publicity over at Entertainment One. The clients that we have there, or the artists that we have there, are Brandy, Seven Streeter, The Game, Blueface, and a number of other people. Oh, and Royce the 5'9". How can I forget? Because he was nominated.
How could you forget? Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight, Tasha. And how about you?
Thank you for having me, by the way.
Of course.
Thanks for having me. My name's Paul Dryden. I work at ATO Records. Pronoun is he, and our current Grammy nominees are Black Pumas, Brittany Howard, and Emily King.
Awesome. And how about you, Aishah?
Hi, yeah, my name is Aishah White. I am a Senior VP of Media and Strategic Development over at Warner Records. And my artist Chika is nominated Best New Artist this year for Grammys. We also have a full roster of amazing artists, from another Grammy nominee, Freddie Gibbs, to Sweetie, Andrew Day, and everyone in between.
Wow. Congratulations to each of you. Thank you. Congratulations to each of you and your artists. Super exciting. So tonight we're going to be diving into some of the campaigns behind these Grammy nominated artists this year. So we're super excited to just jump right into things. So with that, I will throw it over to Mia with the first question.
Yes, thank you. What are some ways that the industry can make award shows like the Grammys become more diverse? And what practices / campaigns will encourage a more diverse nomination pool?
Like we said, anyone can just jump in wherever.
I think one approach is being involved on a regional level, like really being kind of on the ground floor of like all the different scenes, like in smaller cities, and trying to, you know, empower and expand the local scenes in terms of not necessarily the big cities, but like the kind of smaller cities, and helping to, you know, lift up and highlight artists that are coming from different places and different backgrounds in that way. And I think that, you know, the Academy and the chapters do that in a good way, but I feel like you can go even deeper, and it also means obviously going beyond the kind of expected places in that way. That's one initial idea, you know.
Totally, focusing on the local level sounds super important. Just before we get into the rest of the questions, want to introduce our panelists. Hi, Kaz, how are you?
Hello, I'm so sorry, guys, for being so late. I just had to get something wrapped up.
That's totally okay. We really appreciate you joining us. But we actually just wrapped up introductions. So if you want to just introduce yourself, talk about, you know, your company and your clients, that'd be awesome.
Sure. I'm Kaz. I'm Kaz Shan. I'm the Senior Director of PR at Interscope Records. We have a bunch of incredible artists on the label. On my roster specifically, I've been dubbed the diaspora artist, so usually a lot of artists of the diaspora. So that includes people like Shansia, Young Raja, who's a Singaporean bilingual rapper, as well as like a lot of JVs. So working with like J. Cole's Dreamville, specifically JID and Earth Gang, who are the ones that are nominated for the Grammy, and a bunch of other really awesome like breaking artists.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So we were just answering the first question, which was, what are some ways that the industry can make award shows like the Grammys become more diverse? what practices and campaigns will encourage a more diverse nomination pool? And I think I cut you off there, Aishah. I apologize, but if you want to jump into it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I think you know, from an organizational standpoint, I feel like figuring out ways to open up the voting membership to a more diverse group of voters is key, because we know that, you know, you can only be nominated for an award by voting members. And I just feel like it's not diverse enough. And it's probably for a lot of different reasons, but I think that, you know, promoting to a wider network of creatives, of industry executives who are, you know, diverse and maybe in different areas that don't necessarily deal with the Recording Academy on a regular basis is a great place to start.
Totally. And I think it would be important for our audience to hear, just because we do have some who are high school students and university students. You know, what goes into becoming a voting member of the Academy? Are you able to expand on that a bit?
They do have rules. Their rules are posted online on Grammy.com, but you know, ones that I know off the top of my head, probably to be a voting member, you have to be a creative who has had a certain amount of records, whether singles or albums. I don't remember what the exact numbers are, but you have to have published a certain amount of music to be eligible. And then I know, as far as, you know, music industry professional goes, I think it goes by the amount of years you've been in the industry, and what particular clients you've worked with, if you're a manager or an agent or, you know, an industry executive. But yeah, there are quite a few rules to it, and it would be great for everyone to start taking the time to really understand the ins and outs of the organization, and how they can become more involved, and what roles they can play in making it more diverse, because it is something too that takes a village. It's not just going to be the Recording Academy, so people have to really invest in what's going on there, and do their own research and deep dives on how they can become more involved. Yeah.
On my side, because I'm looking it up right now, I know they did change. They changed the rules a few times over the years. I think I just joined after how many years of being in the industry, like maybe like 3-4 years ago. I do know right now, the last time I read it, I read up on it. It was the anyone who has worked on a project. So it's the producers, it's the engineers, it's the musicians, it's the artists, of course. And if you are actually on like the credits, not that we get credits anymore, but like for us, like me and Aishah, we can't be voting members. But there was a time when, as publicists, you had the opportunity to vote. Now they've changed it. I do kind of agree with Aishah with the fact that I think it's the education of it, because a lot of artists don't realize like they can join, and it's really not that expensive to join. If you're nominated, you automatically become a member for, I think, for that year, but then you have to go and actually like pay your dues and stuff like that. when like right before COVID started, I was trying to, and I think I was traveling too much. So I was trying to actually go to events so I could actually learn more about how I could participate. But I do agree, like it's the education of it that I think gets lost on a lot of people on like why it matters and why their participation matters and how to really be active. Because I've had other artists who are highly active within the Recording Academy space.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, they did, you know, Grammy on the Hill. They've done, you know, like they were governors or, you know, like they were very much a part of the Academy. So.
Yeah, I think that makes sense that with the lack of representation of the people voting, you know, for these categories, that would result in a lack of nominees or, you know, lack of diverse winners, of course. Really good point there. What are your thoughts, Kaz?
The one point that I kind of think about when it comes to diversity in general, when it comes to Grammys and nominations, or even just how we segment the nominations, is definitely like genres. You know, I think in the last couple of years, it's become so much more, I'm going to say, controversial on how we sort of separate
Totally.
artists into what categories and how they get nominated. And I think that's kind of divisive as well, because, you know, if somebody looks at an artist and they happen to be Black, they're automatically considered hip hop and R&B, whilst they might actually make pop music or they might make alternative indie music. And I think understanding how those things happen also kind of I think will help a little bit more as well when it comes to representation. And I think it's changing. Like I've been in a couple of meetings with the Grammy boards where they're making a much more concerted effort into how they can educate people on like how the Grammys work, how you can be involved. There's more like school programs that are happening so that it can get ingratiated into school systems at an earlier age. But for me, the sticking point has always been just genres and how people get nominated and what categories they get put into, pending how they could possibly win, you know, because it either works for your favor or it doesn't.
Right. Do you think the acknowledgement and in a lot of cases the changing of terms like urban or master, you know, a lot of this terminology is very clearly an issue. Do you think that's a step in the right direction, or do you think, you know, personally, I think that's not enough, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it.
I mean, every time I hear a nomination category, I kind of laugh. Like, what is adult contemporary? You know,
right?
And then I read through it, and I read through the nominations. It was like, oh, so you just mean R&B of today? Okay. Right. And I think, like, you know, I think it's also just as simple as like explaining what they mean by that, you know, and not in such kind of confusing terms of like, well, it has to have this many bars and blah blah blah. And you know, I'll be the first person to put up my hand. I don't have any like classical musical education. My entire education has been business related and in PR and media. So for me, it's kind of hard for me to sort of wrap around the terminology, even though I'm a massive music fan. So it could just be like actually just explaining like what they sort of mean by a lot of that.
Yeah,
Don't worry, Kaz. I've had music education, and I don't know. So
it's not a very accessible way to like label these categories. It doesn't give people, like you said, even you know we sort of understand it. I'm the same as you. Like I question, you know, what does this category mean, even for those of us who work in the business. But for those who are just watching because they're fans of music or regular music consumers, it's not at all accessible. And I think that's an overarching metaphor for a lot of things. But so for our next question, and I realize this sort of a higher level question, but in your opinion, what makes an artist's music, what brings an artist's music to the Grammy level? Maybe not even just their music, but what brings an artist in their career? You know, what can foster that turning point for them where you're like, their music is, you know, ready, or what brings it to that point?
I don't think anything brings it to that point except for the artist creating great music. You know, the one thing you could say about the Grammys is that they know music and they're not just going off of a fad or a trend or whatever. They're selecting great music.
So really just all in the work of the artist.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I don't necessarily know if anybody goes into the studio and says, let me create like great Grammy music. You know, a good song is a good song at the end of the day, hands down, you know, whether it's hip hop, R&B, pop, you know, I think it's undeniable when a song is like, you hands down, you can't deny it. And I think that's when people start to see like, wow, okay, you know what, maybe we need to pay attention to this artist a little bit more. But I also think that, I think we've, over the years, we've also been really surprised at the artists that do get nominated, because, you know, sometimes you're like, you know, you didn't even know that they had a song out, or, you know, it just kind of, it's there. So like, they may not have been on radio, there may not have been a lot of bubbling about it, but they get the nom. And that doesn't even, that doesn't mean that the music wasn't good, because then after you realize and you go and check it out, you're like, oh wow, like it was really good. So, you know, you have people that listen, you know, you submit your artists for consideration, and people sit there and they listen through everything. So
I think we're in an age of like so much data, you know, where there's access to all the streaming numbers, so much like knowledge of how things are charting and where it like sits in comparison to other albums, and that's incredible. I'm such a fiend for that data, but I think it also kind of hampers the sort of like awareness or like the understanding of like of a certain album or a certain artist, you know, because so many genres, just by the nature of kind of how they're consumed and their audience, they may not be charting in the same way, you know, in terms of like their streaming numbers, their sales are not on the same level, their social media numbers. So in my opinion, I feel like Grammy albums, as was said, it's about like just amazing music, you know, and what I love about like, you know, particular nominations are just like also original music in the way of like just truly original music, you know, that no one else could make, that makes you feel, you know, moved, you know, and so I think it's so important that albums are considered that aren't necessarily like at the top of the charts where everybody knows about it, and doesn't make it like less worthy to be like an album of the year, in my opinion. You know, there's different schools of thought, but that's
Are
kind of
there
my
any specific examples you can think of, you know, of the scenario that you mentioned, sort of where the data is telling a bit of a different narrative?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, like with our artists, Black Pumas, you know, we have album of the year and record of the year nominations, and they're definitely, thank you. Thank you. It's been
I
amazing
certainly was excited to
campaign.
see them in the
Yeah,
list. I just want to say that
That's
out there.
incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because, you know, a lot of like pundits and especially like the New York Times are so critical of them getting nominated and say like, who is this band? Like, they're not worthy of these categories. And it's crazy because, you know, I work at an independent label, you know, like we're not anyway, we're distributed by a major, but we're very much an independent label. And so our budgets, our campaigns are very like kind of like DIY style, you know? And so when you look at like the artists we're nominated against, you know, whether it's like Dua Lipa or Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift, it's just another stratosphere, you know? And I don't think like those albums versus this album are any more worthy of like the nomination, you know? And so when the New York Times says like, oh, this Black Pumas album is not worthy because it does, people don't know what it is. For us as an independent label that's been around for 20 years, like we've actually found the most success we've ever had, you know, like we've sold more than 300,000 albums, you know, which in this era is crazy. You know, we have a song that has 150 million streams, which for an independent label is also really crazy. you know. So
Totally.
it's just pretty wild for me when I see like, you know, big industry pundits and media say, oh, this band, no one knows who they are, like why are they nominated, you know. So it's all perspective, you know,
Absolutely.
context.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You have artists that they've obviously made, you know, really great music. And, you know, it's kind of like they came out of nowhere and everybody's shocked, but now let them go and win. What's going to happen next?
Yeah.
It's going to change everything. So,
Totally.
Kaz, I saw you smile as Paul was originally answering the question. I was curious to know what was going on in your head.
I was just sort of thinking, I think like, you know, these nominations, they're, you know, if nothing else, it's like such an incredible support of true artistry. I think time and time again, Grammys always pick artists who have incredible artistry within them, you know, whether because they've shown it or because there's so much promise to it. And like somebody like a Black Pumas is a great example of what we're sort of talking about, you know. It is a great body of work and it's really, really good artistry. And to like what Tasha was saying, like, you hear it, you instantly get it. You might not listen to it every single day. You might have never heard of it before, but I think like as music fans, we recognize when we hear a great body of music that's undeniable, you know? And I think that's kind of why like I love places like the Grammys and maybe some more of these like old school places, right? Like an NPR, for example, that really still do recognize like true artistry.
Also,
Absolutely. I think that artists, like the storytelling in that narrative really shines through very clearly. And like you said, when you know, you just know. So I'll throw it over to Mia with the next question.
Yes, thank you. What do you think was the most crucial part of your own personal campaigns that led to your artist's music being nominated this year?
I'm very excited. And I don't want to like put any pressure on you, Paul, but since you were just talking about it, I'm curious to hear.
For this particular campaign, it's the Pumas were like, it's a 2-year campaign. So we released their debut in June of 2019. So we started working on it at the beginning of that year. And so it's been the longest campaign ever, but in the most beautiful way. I think every single day of the past 2 years, something like magical and exciting has happened. And we've just been so persistent and also so patient to let the band grow and to take their time. And it was interesting because, you know, in quarantine and in the pandemic, so many artists kind of like not gave up, but like were just, you know, so frustrated by the reality and trying to find inspiration or just trying to like, you know, stay motivated and stay active. And this band has been active every single day during the pandemic, and they've like never told us no and just worked so hard. So it's been incredible because where I feel like they've actually like prospered during this time as much as, you know, an independent band can by not leaving home and finding a way to just make do with their, you know, their setting and being in, you know, Austin, Texas, where it's just a certain reality right now. So that has just been so incredible to be like part of an album for 2 years and get that recognition, but also kind of like this week we've made it onto the alternative radio charts for the first time in 2 years. So like this is crazy that it takes this long, you know, just to get on the radio charts of a song that's been out for 2 years and written like more than 7 years ago.
Yeah,
So
totally. I think, you know, something I've heard often throughout the pandemic that you shared was this idea that the pandemic and just, you know, being quarantined has either pushed artists to the point where, you know, they're taking some time off or push them to new limits of creativity. It sort of sounds like they went with the latter.
exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's really awesome.
I'm trying to see who wants to go next.
I think for me with Chika, it was such a weird time. I mean, we released her debut EP the week before everything locked down in March of last year. And, you know, we had this campaign that included a tour and included, you know, even New York press run that we had to cancel. Just so many things at once. Chika was really like, you know, what do I actually do next? And she decided to just kind of go with the flow. At the same time, so much was going on. The George Floyd stuff happened not too long after that. And, you know, I think everyone's attention just turned to what was going on in the country at the moment. And Chika was no different. And I think she really just leaned into who she was as a person and the human spirit that she has, and like really put herself out there through social media. And, you know, like Paul was saying, instead of her pulling back during that time, she became even more visible, and people really gravitated to her message at that time and what she was doing. And for a little while, it even seemed like it was more about the movement than it was about the music. And then it all kind of came back together in such a beautiful way. You know, we went, I think what was really impactful for Chika, aside from her social presence, was the TV performances and just the performances that we did. You know, shout out to NPR and saying that earlier, because Tiny Desk, I think, was a pivotal moment in Chika's career. And it was the last thing she was able to do live before the pandemic, like in studio before the pandemic and with fans. And it just carried that recording brought so many people joy, and to be able to watch it over and over again in a time where you're feeling like, it was just a breath of fresh air. So we're like, all right, you know, let's keep that going. And I think her performances on Fallon, as well as Desus and Mero, and what she did for the LeBron James special, I think all of those moments were special, and it really captivated a large audience. If people, you know, a lot of people didn't know who Chika was, and that was their first time getting a taste of her. And it just brought them back to really discovering her body of work. So that worked really well in our favor.
And you talked about the message that Chika was trying to spread, and I assume you mean with industry games. I'm curious to hear, you know, what that message means to you and how you feel like, you know, the part that you played in helping to get that message out there as well.
I feel like Chika's message from that EP, Industry Games, is really about perseverance and self-love, and just believing in yourself. You know, Chika is very confident in knowing her place and what she has to contribute to the world. And she's always been secure in that. And that, I think Industry Games was just a testament to what she had believed from the beginning, and, you know, letting people know what she's bringing in hip hop, and just to contribute to this world. And it's a message that you can do anything you put your mind to, and, you know, to never stop believing in yourself, that it's all possible. And it was really great for me to be able to help spread that message. It's something that we all need to hear. And in watching Chika grow as an artist, and one release after the next, the way that people have picked up on her music and the message in her music is just awe-inspiring. So I'm really happy to have helped and be a part of the journey that she's on. Yeah.
I felt lucky to be consuming that message. I felt like, you know, it was one of those that was so necessary during the pandemic, and like you said, so uplifting, and just the self-love aspect of that was so crucial. I'm curious to hear from you, Kaz. Earth Gang was actually my last show at Gramercy before the pandemic, so I was so
Oh, that was a
excited to
good
see.
show.
It
That
was
was a really good show.
incredible. It was on Valentine's Day. It was really incredible.
I remember.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
played
We were
at
gonna get
Warsaw, I think maybe the
roses.
next night or the one night around there. I saw them in Brooklyn like right around then too. That was
yeah,
so
I think so.
powerful.
Yeah,
Trying to
and I
remember.
think if I remember correctly at Gramercy, they brought JID out. It was really incredible. And Revenge of the Dreamers is just one of my favorite albums. So I'm just curious to hear a bit more about like what that means to you, the part you played, etc.
Oh, mate, like thrilled. This is Earth Gang's second Grammy nomination. And I think that, like, for us, this was super special because it was twice in a row. It was 2 times in a row. I still remember, like, being on that FaceTime with Olu, and the managers and like some of the teams at the label, just listening to the nominations because we were like, I don't know, maybe we know we sent it in, we don't know where we're gonna get in.
Mm-hmm.
And then to hear it kind of be read out, we were all kind of like shocked, because it wasn't a category that we thought we were going to get. And, it was much better than the category we thought. So they were nominated for Collide, which is a song off the soundtrack for Queen and Slim. And I think what's special about this record and, just how we kind of went about it is, the guys are signed to Dreamville Interscope. I'm an Interscope publicist, but the song actually came out on Capitol Motown. But we all as a team just sort of rallied because, if you've ever met the Earth Gang team or the Dreamville team, like, we're super family orientated, and like we go hard on anything and everything that like everybody does, right? So even though the song didn't necessarily come out on the label, we were super excited about it because it was an important milestone for Earth Gang. It was a really big moment for the culture and all that kind of stuff, and we kind of went all in on just making sure that it got as much recognition as possible. And I think that was what was special. Like, we worked really, really closely with Motown and really, really closely with, the team over there to make sure that it got as much shine as it could. And, for Earth Gang, I've been working with the guys now for almost 4 years, and like, we're starting to really feel it. We're starting to really feel the excitement that people have for them, and the artistry that they have. And it's because they work really, really hard. Like, the pandemic was the first time both guys were like in Atlanta in over 3 or 4 years. Like, since they sort of kicked off the EP, they've been touring massively, like across America. They're international sort of touring acts. So they've always kind of like been busy, and it was a real testimony last year to sort of see what they would do with all this sort of free time. And in classic Earth Gang and Jid fashion, they decided, F it, let's put out another album, which was the Spillage Village album, and it was a real moment for us in time, again, for like reflecting on everything that happened in the year. And it was cool. It was cool for us that we were able to celebrate Collide by still doing them, right? Like, they still put out a dope album. We championed that. And I think, like, for them, a lot of the recognition also came from the work that they did on the ground in Atlanta too, like teaming up with Stacey Abrams and Mayor Keisha Bottoms, and helping to sort of turn Georgia blue. And I think that's all part of, these guys' stories. And the Grammy is just like, it's a nice little cherry on top of their musical sort of nod. But, we've always kind of thought of Earth Gang as this really huge brand, and the music sort of helps us do, well, I'll speak for them, the music helps them do what they want to do in this world, which is to create a change.
Right. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. Like, I feel like they haven't really stopped dropping music or making music for a few years now. It's
no,
so crazy.
not at all. Not at all.
But congrats. I mean, I can't imagine how much of an unreal moment that is to hear, that nomination read out loud. That's amazing. And Tasha, curious to hear from you, of course.
Well, 2020 and this Grammy nomination is bittersweet because we were super excited. So for us, we had 2 big projects, and this was the Royce project. For us with Royce, we had just started in January, the whole press run, like hitting the ground, everybody's back in the office. Went to LA probably twice to do like runs, and he did a lot of stuff. And this project was really, really good because in the end, although the allegory kind of ended up being fitting for everything that was going on with George Floyd, and it spoke to a lot of stuff. So, and a lot of topics. And I think with Royce, that's what really moved because people felt it. But at the time, you know, we didn't know that, you know, the pandemic was about to shut us down. So it had like, we had shut down like right after we had started did the last run. Like I was actually getting prepared to go back to LA. And I was like, okay, I got to go back to LA in another week. And then it was like, no, you're staying home. And then, you know, like we also had the Brandy album that dropped in the summertime. So for us, it was like, okay, Brandy and Royce, those were the top priorities. And Brandy didn't get the nom, which, you know, we were kind of like, what? That made no sense. So for us, you know, it's kind of like, it was bittersweet because to actually try to do a full campaign during the pandemic, I mean, it was like full steam ahead, everybody's on 10. Even with Royce, it was like, okay, we still have to push more and more music. I just really think like for him, it resonated during that time. And I think that's what really helped with his nomination, because I think, you know, like Royce has been around for a while, you know, and I think with this album, he grew so much, which with each album for him, he's grown as an artist, as a producer. This was the first album that he produced the whole entire thing, period. So, you know, and it was really well received by everyone. And I think even his last project was really well received. And I think with that one too, we thought that we would have gotten the nom. So when we got the nom for him this year, everybody on the phone screaming like, yay, right. What do we do now? So I think at that point it was, you know, everybody just really kind of like hunkered down and was like, okay, what else can we do to really make this album still resonate? And but I just think the message inside of it, you know, not even knowing what was going to happen, it just really came at a really great time. And, you know, I know that he was so honored to be in the category with his peers. And, you know, we're just hoping for the best.
Absolutely.
Like, you know, I think for any artist saying that, you know, you're Grammy nominated is an amazing feat, you know, because there's so many other artists who are fighting for the same opportunity. And so, you know, it's like that, not only is it the cherry on top, but it's kind of like that medal of honor that your peers really like you, or they really like this baby that you birthed and you put out there, and they really felt the same way that you felt, that your label felt, like this is a great body of work.
Sounds like it's just like this sort of noble level version of affirmation, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it sounds like this was something like a piece of work that was really deeply personal to him, especially, you know, with you mentioning he produced it top to bottom. And, you know, it was something that he personally resonated with himself. It sounds like it was just a very authentic process for him.
Yeah, it was something that, you know, he's been dabbling in it for years and, you know, working with Primo but this was the first one that he sat down and said, I'm gonna do this myself. And the artists that showed up, You know, him and Eminem are really great friends. And, you know, M came through, and plus, you know, Benny the Butcher and the whole crew, like people really came out for him. And even on the press side, folks really thought it was a great body of work. When we did our press runs, I mean, he shocked me. And that was like, I think this was my first project from the beginning. So I guess almost the end, working with him. And I mean, his work ethic is crazy. I mean, for most hip hop artists, they're not like that. But he was really serious about the craft of it, even showing up. Like his whole imagery changed. Like he got more into fashion, and that wasn't because someone said, you know, you need to start dressing like this. He just started to kind of combine, you know, things that he loved from hip hop in general, from, you know, growing up, to stuff that his father instilled in him. And now that, you know, he's a father and a husband, and he just kind of, his whole thought process just evolved. So this project is just is part of his evolution. Like, I mean, the allegory, don't get me wrong, like who is it? It's not, who wrote the book at the allegory? This always killed me every time we talked about it. But I mean, like who, like he reads Plato and all that other stuff. Like who does that? Mm-hmm. And for him, it was like he took that all in, and in producing this project, he turned that around to something that made it current. So now, you know, and then the pandemic, and then George Floyd, and the album just came up like, wow, we didn't even know this was coming. And it just sit it right here. We're gonna sit it right here for y'all to listen. So, you know, I'm so happy for him. I'm really happy for him that, you know, that he was nominated. The project was really good. And I'm just excited to see where it goes.
Yeah. Fingers crossed. That's awesome. It's really cool that he, you know, like you said, sort of went through this personal evolution, was able to put that into his music and have it resonate so widely. That's really great. Mia, if it's all right with you, I think we're cutting it close to time, so I'm going to segue right into our Q&A and skip the last question. So who do we have up first for Q&A? I believe it's an attendee named Monica. Hey, Monica, can you hear us?
Yeah, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for submitting your question.
Thanks so much for picking it.
Of course.
So yeah, hi everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for taking time for being here and talking to us. So I myself am an avid music fan as well as a Grammy fan. I like watch it every year. So my question is, do you think that in the future fans might have the chance to choose or sway the Grammy nominations? For example, I'm a really big fan of like BTS and Harry Styles, and I've seen like fans kind of break records to kind of get, I guess, like more attention, and also kind of do their own little Grammy campaigns kind of to get like nominations or like even a performance spot. So yeah, that's my question.
I mean, I don't know personally, because I think there's a lot of other awards that are fan nominated and fan voted.
Amen.
But in saying that, I feel like, you know, a way fans can sort of show their vote is by listening to the music and buying the music and like going to shows. I think that's how a lot of fans kind of show up for their artists. But I'm curious to hear some of the other people's opinions.
Me too.
Yeah, no,
I think like social media though is still like pretty powerful in the sense of just kind of creating momentum for a campaign, you know, from the fan perspective, and showing that, you know, there is a movement behind it. And I feel like the Academy and the voters do pay attention to that. And I think that's really
100%.
crucial. So I think it does make a big difference for sure.
I agree as well. Will they actually open it up to fans to vote? I don't think so. That's what I think the AMAs, that's what they're for. But I do agree that social media and fans really buying and listening, for the voters, they pay attention to that. You know, they're, even if, you know, you could be in Iowa selling out shows, you know, there's voters out there and they go to shows too. So they'll see the reaction from everyone around them and say like, oh, I've never heard of this band. Let me go and check it out. You know, so I think that's really the input that the fans have, and you know, which helps the plight of everyone.
So just essentially sort of, you know, doing your due diligence, just listening to the music.
Mhm.
Got it. Awesome. Thank you so much, Monica, for your question. Great question. So I think up next we have a question from Joshua. Hey, Joshua, can you hear us?
Yes. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet you guys. I just wanted to ask, what does the Grammys mean to you all, and did it have any influence on you joining the music industry?
Small question there.
I mean, for me, it had nothing to do with me joining the music industry. I wish that I was exposed to like Grammy in the schools. I mean, I played music since I was like in the 4th grade. So I had no clue about, you know, programs like that. But I mean, growing up, it was, you know, when the Grammys came on, it was an event. You know, everybody's talking about it. You want to talk about the dances and the performances and who won what the next day. But for me getting into the industry, no, I just think that actually getting into the industry wasn't something that I was checking for. It just wasn't. It wasn't. I wasn't, I wanted to do PR, but I didn't want to do music. I just happened to fall into it, but
I knew that about you, Tasha, considering how much you went on mute.
You muted yourself, Tasha.
it wasn't my thing. I did not want to do it. I wanted to do like Broadway and movies and stuff like that. And, you know, thanks to Yvette Noel Shore and a great internship. But
you say that like a bad thing. You're like, I got this darn internship.
No. That was my turning point. That was totally my turning point of like, I could do this.
Right.
But no, like that watching the Grammys didn't have anything to do with it. I think it was just like a great byproduct of what I do. I mean, I love like the weekend and getting to connect with, you know, all my other friends and publicists and meeting new people and hitting a good red carpet. But that was neither here nor there for me. And I don't even think like when I started, it really hit like you should become a member and how it factors in. It was just later on in my career, I figured it out. But you know, I'm still in the learning process of how it works, and you know, and the different parts and sectors and chapters and stuff like that. So yeah.
For me, the Grammys was something I definitely remember watching, and you know, like love a good best dressed Liz, and watching performances and stuff like that. But no, I don't think it had any kind of deciding impact into whether or not I'd be working in the music industry. However, it incredibly validates the work that we do. I think a lot of the publicists on this panel will agree. It is the one award show that publicists truly show out at, right? And we can actually say the one of the reasons you are here on this red carpet is because of PR. Thank you very much.
Right.
And so I think for that, it incredibly validates a lot of the work that we as publicists do. And for me, like, to bring it back to Earth Gang too, it's like, I still remember the day that I got on that, new business call with Earth Gang, because I was their independent publicist before I joined the label, and me laying out my PR plan for them and sort of saying, like, give me like a good solid like debut album in like a few years, we'll get on that red carpet at the Grammys. And to sort of see it come full circle, I think we sort of pinch ourselves every day, me and the team, to sort of say, like, we said this was going to happen and it happened, so it's like proper like validation for sure. Yeah.
Amazing. That's awesome. I'm curious to hear from you, Aishah, what the Grammys mean to you, and if that influenced your career in music at all.
I mean, the Grammys are the biggest night in music, of course. It's so important to me. It always has been. As a little kid, I watched the Grammys. As a teenager, loving music, specifically hip hop, and wanting to see it have its place in history. I became really hooked on Grammy season and, seeing what artists would rise to the top and win. And then as I got into the industry, it became probably one of my biggest goals. Every publicist wants to have a Grammy award-winning artist, and that's something you got to work for. So that's always been a goal. I feel like I've definitely crossed off one of the things this year with getting Best New Artist, because after you get an artist nominated, probably your next Grammy goal is Best New Artist.
Right.
And so now I feel like I can check that one off. And, I am on committee with the Recording Academy in the hip hop and R&B space. And I take that position very seriously. And I work to bring just ideas and resources to the organization and help them in placing music and coming up with ways to make the academy more diverse on a lot of different levels. So I do a lot of work with different departments at the Recording Academy, and I love the partnership. I'm grateful that we have an organization like the Recording Academy, not just for the Grammys, but for everything that they do outside of the Grammys that people usually don't pay attention to or know about. For instance, they have been really big with COVID relief to many artists since the pandemic has started. A lot of artists don't have insurance. A lot of artists don't have means to certain resources and access to certain healthcare. And if some of these artists get sick, a lot of them don't have places to go or the money to pay. And the Recording Academy does a lot on those levels, and even more: music education, music awareness. There's so much that they do, and it's really great to take time to get to know all of those things and work with them on a lot of different levels. So yeah, I'm all for the Academy, and I look forward to continuing to work with them and bringing a more diverse membership to their whole platform. So yeah.
Thank you. And what about you, Paul?
You know, I kind of grew up just into independent music, and that was my passion, was like helping artists and working with bands that were more on the kind of like street level. So I have to say that I didn't really start following the Grammys until I got into the industry and realized that it's such an important element to, you know, careers and campaigns and just being involved with the academy. So I've learned a lot throughout my career and gotten a lot closer to it, and now I pay attention to it so much more, and I appreciate, you know, what it does. And as Aishah mentioned, like there's so much more that happens throughout the year that really makes a difference in artists' lives, personal lives, you know, that I think is so crucial. And even just like the Grammy website and like their whole kind of like approach to editorial coverage is, I think, really great, you know, where they're just like helping lift up artist stories, not necessarily just of nominees, but like, you know, it's just a great resource for music across all genres. So that's kind of my perspective on the world of Grammys.
And then you know, didn't really follow the Grammys so much and then fell into a nomination or two.
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
That was the biggest flex for Paul ever. No, you know,
Right.
you
He's like, I haven't really been following.
No, actually, I used to work in a Latin record label. So I started off like, actually, my first perspective was at the Latin Grammys. And so that was a very different experience in Las Vegas. And just a whole nother world of Grammy wild craziness.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Joshua, for the question. We are just at time. I do want to ask one quick wrap-up question. What do you think was the biggest snub of the year?
Brandy.
Thinking faces. Brandy. Yes, Tasha.
I'll co-sign Brandy for Tasha because that was a brilliant album.
And I worked way hard.
Third co-signer.
Is The Weeknd worthy of a big snub?
I think it's a pretty big one for sure.
Yeah.
What do you think, Aishah?
I kind of have to go with The Weeknd too. I mean, it's the obvious one, but
yeah,
it's still like weird.
Doesn't make much sense. Yeah. Totally. All right. Well, that was our quick wrap-up question. Thank you so much, Joshua and Monica, for your awesome Q&A questions, and to each of our amazing panelists tonight. I'll throw it over on to Mia to close us out.
Yes, thank you all to our wonderful panelists for participating tonight. For any of our new audience members, you can find out all information about our next few panels by going onto our website, which is just www.colormusiccollective.com, and you can follow us on our social media, just at Color Music Collective for everything. But with that, I have a great rest of your evening, and thank you all so much for coming.